AAA game industry is in the throes of a slow and unironically painful death. There. It's been said, and don't act like you weren't thinking it, because we're all thinking it. Now, of course, given the radical sales figures that the industry is churning out yearly, you might raise an eyebrow at that statement. But the heart and soul of the gaming industry is becoming unrecognizable to what it once was even just 15 years ago. And if you're a dedicated gamer, you've likely sensed the palpable truth of what I'm saying. And if you don't, you were probably born after the 90s and you don't remember what gaming was like before it became a corporate money grab. It's true that more money than ever before is being invested in the game industry, and that's led to some pretty positive things, but it's also simultaneously led to some very concerning trends that are quite literally killing the essence of gaming. Before we go any further, I should probably introduce myself. My name is Gabe, the Audio Architect. Welcome to my channel, where gaming, audio, education, and creativity sort of smash together to create something that will hopefully entertain you for the next few minutes. Let's get into it. So while we mourn the golden days of gaming, we need to understand how we got here with all of this. So we need to briefly take a look at how gaming culture, and culture in general, has evolved over the past 20 years or so. But before that, I ask that you like this video and subscribe to help the channel grow. And also sign up for my newsletter by going to my website for more content just like this delivered to your virtual doorstep. It's safe to say that gaming isn't what it used to be. And that's for better or worse. If you're over the age of 30, you'll probably remember the days of going to GameStop and waiting in line for a midnight release, only to rush home and manually insert like 30 freaking discs of install files into your CD-ROM, or renting an N64 game from Blockbuster, hoping that if you blow on the cartridge enough times, the game will actually work. In those days, you had to actually go on a quest IRL in order to quest in-game. When I started gaming, online gaming wasn't even a thing. You had to actually level up your friend-making skills high enough to get people to come over on the weekend so that you can actually have a multiplayer experience. I feel like the lack of accessibility and general jankness created a charm that the modern-day game industry cannot replicate. Because there was less saturation in the market, the lack of options actually fostered a more unified gaming community. In those days, there was only a handful of games that you can play, a mere fraction of what we have available today, and because of that, all of us generally knew and loved the same games. Now the community is far more spread out throughout thousands of games that are categorized by genres within genres. Now all of that isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it is a thing to consider when we're looking at the evolution of gaming. But what's the point of saying all this? Well, the point is that there was a much different expectation of reality that emphasized a different set of values. And it seems very obvious to me that that difference in mindset back then actually influenced game design on a very fundamental level. For example, if you ever played older MMORPGs, there are so many mechanics that most modern gamers would find absolutely intolerable. But they were a reflection of the cultural expectations of that time. Older games featured slower character progressions and steeper learning curves. Forming a group required making actual friends, and once you found your group, fast travel was limited. You either had to mount up or endure a 30-minute walk to your destination. With fewer in-game cosmetics, obtaining quality gear held a ton more significance. It symbolized the time and effort dedicated to the in-game grind. Now don't get me wrong, it's nice that some of these elements have become streamlined. Like, I don't necessarily have 30 minutes to wait in-game to start playing the game that I want to play. But I can't help but to feel that the effort required to do things in those games, in the slow-paced nature of that game design, actually created richer and more memorable experiences. Now this wasn't only true with role-playing games, but also with games like Halo 2, which was launched with the release of Xbox Live and was so incredibly novel because it introduced online gaming to a much broader audience. Halo 2 is a great example of a game that had far fewer features than its successors in the franchise, and because of that, had far fewer distractions from the core element that made it so memorable, which was the social emphasis. In those days, you would queue up for Team Slayer and spend several minutes in the lobby just talking to whoever was there because there was literally nothing else to do. There was no daily challenges to keep track of, no cosmetic upgrades to strive for, there wasn't even an XP bar to indicate how close you were to ranking up. You literally just played a match, and if you won, you'd hope to God that next time you went in the lobby, your rank was higher. I know at this point it's probably easy to say that nostalgia is getting the best of me, and I'm mainly basing this argument on the fact that everyone says things were better back in the day, or maybe games were more novel and therefore they seemed better. Okay. Okay. Alright. But wait! Because I feel like if this opinion was purely based on nostalgia, there wouldn't be the same attraction towards the sheer amount of older games that are being remade. From old school RuneScape, to classic WoW, the Halo 2 Anniversary Edition, the Final Fantasy VII Remake, and all of the remakes for The Legend of Zelda, and there's so many more. It seems obvious that there is a very large demographic of people that want these remakes because they feel that the mechanics are more enjoyable. Like this guy. This guy's the demographic. And while some of these remakes have quality of life updates, they weren't made with this hyper focus on everything being as user-friendly as possible, when your hand is being held throughout the entire duration of the game because God forbid you should use your brain to figure things out. Older games weren't these dopamine dosing machines that are built off of gameplay design that is solely created for player retention. Yes, modern mechanics have their appeal, but a lot of games just end up feeling lifeless. And it's created a generation of gamers that don't even have the patience to play the games they're playing if it doesn't give them instant gratification. Well, that was a handful. And if you've stuck through my existential crisis thus far, you're still probably wondering, well, how did we get here to this point in the game industry? And I'll tell you, but just remember, you asked.
In the last 20 years, several significant things have changed in a relatively short amount of time. Between the years of 2000 and 2010, there was a notable increase in corporate involvement and investment in the game industry. Major companies such as EA, Activision, Blizzard, and more emerged and grew through acquisitions and the development of significant blockbuster titles. This meant that more money than ever was being put into the game industry because of more demand. More demand meant more profit could be made off of games, but with more money comes more problems. Suddenly, the game industry started to get some saucy side glances from other major tech giants like Apple, Google, and Microsoft, who staked their claim in the gaming space largely due to developing apps for mobile gaming. Mobile game mechanics changed the way that game design was approached for every single platform and genre. Though mobile games weren't necessarily the first type of game that introduced microtransactions like loot boxes and pay-to-win mechanics, they certainly took the ball and ran with it. Suddenly, it became a lot more common to see games featuring free-to-play business models, but with a catch. By 2010, we entered into an industrial revolution in the world of gaming. There were more games to play than ever, games were easier to acquire than ever, and there were more economic opportunities than ever. All of those factors, coupled with the ever-increasing pace of society and advancements in technology, led to this.
Goombas.
Oh, wait, not this. I meant this. Yep, that's right. Demon lizards who are clearly from another dimension gained complete control of everything. And there you have it. The corporate takeover of the gaming industry is forcing small and passionate studios to sell to major corporations for survival in an oversaturated and competitive market. And while this can be financially lucrative and ensure the longevity of these studios, it puts developers in a position where they have to relinquish their creative control. When game developers give creative decision-making over to corporations that only care about their wallets, then it should come as no surprise that modern game mechanics reflect that. Cosmetic microtransactions, gameplay systems that ensure player retention, pay-to-win and time-gated FOMO tactics are all mechanics that we see in modern AAA games, and they're getting the gaming community further away from its origins. We now have the final say of what goes in our games being made by people that don't even play games. But with all of that being said, something very exciting has been taking place over the past decade or so that I haven't yet touched on. The rise of these not so favorable modern game mechanics have turned many passionate game developers away from the corporate world to pursue their dreams of creating amazing games free from corporate bureaucracy. So inadvertently, these mega corporations have brought enough financial demand and mainstream notoriety to the game industry to make it easier than ever for passionate people to develop and publish their own games without formal education or spending much money. The mainstreamification of games has given us widespread access to an infinite number of free learning resources and incredibly powerful tools like Unreal Engine, Unity, Godot, and many more. So in attempts to suck the life out of everything that was once pure and enjoyable about games, the actions of these major corporations once again have pissed off enough people to spark a gaming revolution. And thus we see the rise of the indie game movement. So the final question becomes this: what can we do as passionate gamers and developers to combat the toxic trends of modern AAA games? While we might not be able to halt the momentum of the corporate gaming world, we can certainly channel more energy toward the direction we envision for the industry. For solo developers or small studios, supporting fellow indie devs is crucial, so show your support in any way that you can. A strong community of indie game developers enhances resources for creating better games. For non-developer gamers, voting with your wallet sends a powerful message. Consumer choices drive the gaming industry, and therefore by supporting games that actually align with your values and avoiding those that perpetuate undesirable trends, you send a clear message to the industry. So in other words, if you're disenchanted with the AAA game mechanics, don't just complain about it, stop buying the product. And lastly, for those feeling the call to delve into game development but are hesitating, now is the time to take the plunge. There's never been a better time to learn about game development, and the industry needs fresh ideas from people who are passionate about making games. Learning game development has never been more accessible through free online courses and communities where aspiring developers can gain knowledge and feedback for their games. So let's wrap this up. Gaming isn't what it once was, and it probably never will be. That isn't a bad thing, but it is a thing, and it needs to be a continual discussion within the community. The worst thing that can happen is that we collectively become so apathetic that we stop caring about the media that we consume. And when apathy sets in, people tend to feel like they have no say in what happens. And the fact of the matter is that we do have a say in what happens. It just requires you and me and others like us to care enough about doing something to make a difference. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe to help the channel grow. And until next time, have an excellent day and stay blessed.